Today on CityCast Boise, it's finally Friday, and our Hey Boise newsletter editor Blake Hunter is with me to dig into the week's news. We're talking righteous rage tweets, grown-up apologies, and a new lawsuit from a former city council member. Plus, Boise, we're having a party! It's Friday, April 14th. I'm Emma Arnold, and this is what Boise's talking about. Hi, Blake.
Hey, Emma. How's it going?
Good. It's been a very interesting and eventful week, and I think we should start with this story about Boise School District trustee Shiva Rajmandari. He just formally apologized for a profane tweet that he sent Governor Little after the governor signed the bill banning gender-affirming care for minors. And I think most people can probably guess where I sit on this debate as a comedian and someone who has, fairly regularly tweeted things at the governor. But I'm really curious to see how you feel about the situation, Blake.
We haven't really talked about this, so I do want to hear your perspective outright. But yeah, I mean, I was out of town last week when this was kind of happening, but kind of followed along on Twitter a little bit and was like, oh gosh, I'm glad I'm not having to cover this right now. But I think that it's at the crux of a lot of things here. We have a Boise versus Idaho debate going on in a lot of ways. It's related to schools. It's related to trans-affirming care for minors. There's so much kind of going on jam-packed into this. And, unfortunately for Shiva, he's 18 and he's at the crux of this debate, and he's, well equipped to deal with it. But at the same time, I don't know, it's just a difficult situation. I also understand that, the Boise School District, with the way the system is set up, they kind of had to have him apologize. They had to apologize to Governor Little for that. But as we'll kind of get into, it's really frustrating. It's a frustrating situation, just kind of having him have to walk back these kinds of things and apologize for this behavior when, we have 60-year-old legislators who are not being profane always, but saying really horrible things about trans kids in the legislature as elected officials. And I'd take Shiva over them any day, honestly. And I'd take this response over them any day, to be honest. Yeah. What are your thoughts? I assume that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what you're assuming, probably true. I think that, I honestly, I want to say I was really proud of Shiva. I thought that standing up, speaking truth to power is a big piece of why I do comedy. And I thought that, he expressed himself in the moment, his anger and his hurt and his fear for his trans friends and family. And I really felt like, that was a very impassioned thing to say. And I was, a lot of people were kind of critical of him for apologizing, but I agree with you that he has a job to do. He has responsibilities. I thought he took it on the chin. I thought he took it like a pro, it takes a lot of integrity to say, I thought his apology was really perfect, where he's like, I don't back up the sentiment.
Yep.
I'm not pulling that in at all, but I am standing by. I do want to apologize for my language. That said, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I totally agree with you in that, what's happening is so much worse than what he said. And, I read through a lot of Shiva's replies on social media, people replying to him specifically. And a lot of the same people who were very worried about his uncouth language regularly say some pretty vile, horrible stuff to him. And I just thought, it's another example, as usual, of tone policing, of just being really hypocritical in actions that harm people, but you're supposed to be, pleasant and, easy to listen to when you respond.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is just a perfect example of respectability politics. As he's an elected official, so, he is held up to certain standards of quote unquote professionalism. And yeah, I wish that half of our elected officials in Idaho acted with half the amount of integrity that he did.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought, it's the same people tweeting these horrible things at him who are like, you're an elected official. You should blah, blah, blah. You should have more, class. I'm like, he's also a high school student. And I see, certain bad actors on Twitter regularly saying like really disgusting things to him. I'm like, he's a high schooler and you're saying these things to him. And yet you have a problem with him saying, saying something to the governor like this. And I do want to say, he said in a follow-up tweet that he said too that it's hypocrisy to suggest that like the profanity he used is more harmful than what HB 71 is going to do to the trans community. And I imagine you can speak to that really personally.
Yeah, I mean, when there are such high level, such institutional forms of this is just straight up discrimination being put in place, rage can be righteous. It can be powerful. It's a political strategy. I definitely think that there's in my mind, there is no doubt that the profanity is by far less harmful than what House Bill 71 is going to do and has already done. This is high level institutional discrimination that's being put in place against trans kids and their families and against like physicians as well, that is going to increase instability in Idaho's healthcare community and like trans communities. Point out the harm in his tweet. Like, what harm did that cause? It was directed to the governor. He's going to be fine. Trans kids are not going to be fine in Idaho. And I wish that we had more elected officials expressing their rage, because when you don't see that rage expressed in your government and in your politics, boy, is that extremely isolating. And, it's a Band-Aid, but rage can be righteous and rage can be a political strategy. And it can be used like for healing for communities that need it most. So yeah, it's really frustrating that frankly, he is being held to a higher standard than our legislators. And also, he mentioned this, we'll get into kind of the story about Lisa Sanchez and the city council later, but he also mentioned the other day, with her story, there's a lot of racism happening there where two women of color being pitted against one another. A lot of the stuff that's being directed at Shiva Rajmandari is also influenced by racism for sure.
I mean, absolutely agree with you on the racism piece. And boy, if you ever want to see some hideous replies to a public official, the replies to Lisa Sanchez, I get chills thinking about the hateful, horrible stuff that she has tolerated and had to live with. But I do wonder, is there a kind of a generational divide on this? Because what we're seeing is a lot of, boomer age political people and other people, saying, how could you say this to a publicly elected official? And Shiva being, Gen Z, I mean, I have teenagers. These kids are feral. I always say it. Like, they are not messing around. They are they are done with this crap.
Yeah. And some of the people that I saw commented about his words are interested in the environment and are passionate about climate change and, are more than willing to follow his activism on that front because he's made a lot of big moves there. And that's been a big part of his platform. But then they're really quick to just turn around and be like, oh, you child. And it's like, well, where's your spine? But yeah, I mean, just the condescension that has been leveled at him just on the grounds of, him being a child is, really disgusting, frankly.
Super disgusting. That's a good point. I was thinking of it more from his perspective, but you're right that so much of what I've seen has been, he'll figure it out. It's a learning opportunity for him. And it's like, he did something none of us who are older than, I haven't run for office. The people, criticizing him haven't done that, haven't taken on the civic roles and responsibility that Shiva was willing to do. Mm-hmm. And, yeah. And I think about, Shiva is the same age as two of my kids, essentially. And I think about how in my kids' lifetime, school shootings have gone off the charts. They watched two presidents drop the ball on COVID. They have been through they're watching climate change just sort of get shelved and not dealt with by, politicians. And they have grown up in this, being able to see that, systemically, the government is not serving them. And so why would someone who is 18 it's have so much respect for the government. And also it's funny to me that all the same far right people who are like literally like, yeah, we should go to the Capitol and break windows are like, you
Yeah.
can't say the F word to the governor.
Oh, yeah. Just blasphemy. No, I know. And that's something that I really respect and admire about a lot of Gen Z is just that, like, they have a level of perspective. They have watched their entire lives the government just not care about school shootings, about gun violence, we're trying to get there on climate change, but not gaining a lot of traction. And I think that they just have a level of perspective that I wish I'd had a bit more of growing up, where it was just like, oh my goodness, we have to like, I don't know. They just kind of see it for what it is. And they're, again, like you said, they're ready to take some hits because they have a better perspective on the long-term like prognosis.
Yeah, well put.
Coke and music can bring us together, connect us, transform us. Introducing the newest limited edition Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola Move. Taste the transformation.
I could talk about this all day because it's very much in my wheelhouse of things I'm constantly thinking about. You know, as somebody who people are like, why don't you do clean comedy all the time? But because I hate making money. But anyway, let's move on to another messy local situation, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
Mayor McLean recently appointed 2 new members to the Boise City Council to fill the vacancies, and neither one of them was former city council person Lisa Sanchez. Blake, do you mind catching us up maybe for people who haven't been following this as closely?
Totally. So essentially, the city council has recently had 2 vacancies. One of them was because longtime city council member Elaine Clegg left to be CEO of Valley Regional Transit. So her vacancy was an at-large seat. And, well, I guess current representative Colin Nash was appointed to fill that seat. And then Lisa Sanchez's seat became vacant or was vacated. The verbiage around that is always a little interesting. Was vacated because she moved out of her district because as a renter, she was told that she had to move. And then it's a little bit foggy, but she essentially moved out of her district and her seat was vacated. And she applied to fill that vacancy. She was considered for it and then she didn't. She wasn't chosen. And so it's been, you know, Lisa Sanchez has had a really controversy-filled run in the city council. A lot of that has not been her fault, honestly. And so she is pretty upset that she wasn't selected for that. And then there's kind of been some fallout from there that we can get into.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated. It's kind of a hard situation to pull apart because on the one side you have Council President Holly Woodings and Council Member Patrick Bagent on record with the Idaho Statesman saying the reason that she, you know, basically didn't get the job that she was elected for back is that it would have been difficult for them to support her returning. And
Right.
Bagent even went further and said he had real reservations about her honesty and integrity and had issues with that. And, you know, that she had made false and misleading statements and sometimes even lies. And it's hard to tell what's going on, honestly, from the outside. Like, half of me feels like, are they mean girling her? Like, are there legit concerns about her behavior? Like, what do you think?
I mean, as we kind of talked about previously, she has had so much hate levied against her over the past few years. She has just been made into an absolute punching bag, which is not accidental as the only person of color on the city council, as the only renter. And it's really interesting to see these other council members, to some extent, you know, to some interpretations turn on her. And to some interpretations have genuine concerns about some of the things that have happened that, you know, we probably will never really have very clear. A lot of people have their set answers for what they think has happened. But I don't know. What do you think is going on here?
It's so complicated. And now she's filed this lawsuit and she's asking the court to void City Council member Latonia Haney Keith's appointment to District 3. And she's saying, like, the city doesn't have the authority to remove her. And honestly, to be fair, I mean, she was elected. And it does seem a little weird to select someone, even who made a mistake. Like, even if you're on the team, she messed up the paperwork. It's her fault. She lost the seat. Even still seems weird to me to select somebody who wasn't elected to the position. Also, a lot of the language around that was interesting to me. The press release saying we want someone who can hit the ground running, who understands housing issues. And it's like, well, I think Lisa could do both of those things, and just like her lawyer, Wendy Olson, is saying that this is, possibly retaliation.
Totally.
And, Lisa's publicly spoken about systemic racism down at City Hall. And, there were the issues with her campaign finance stuff that IFF filed a thing for. So I don't know, a very loaded, heated thing. And I guess I'll just be interested to see what plays out, what happens with this lawsuit.
And to be clear, you mentioned like the campaign finance reports. Those have all been cleared.
No wrongdoing with that. And also, turns out it was filed by Idaho Freedom Foundation, who have, like you said, made her their punching bag for the last year or two. So I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna ask it. Do we feel like, this is an election year for the mayor? Is this political? Did she know she would get shit for reappointing Lisa Sanchez?
I think maybe, but also I don't know if this is going to work out in the mayor's favor again, because maybe what she's trying to do here, I think, is kind of have a clean slate and trying to move forward. But then also like Patrick Bagent's comments, questioning your fellow council members' honesty and integrity is no small. That's going to be tough, because do they expect that she's not going to hang around and like continue to be in city politics? They know that she will. So I'm interested to see how this plays out for both her and also what kind of backlash Mayor McLean is going to get for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move into something a little bit more fun to finish off the week. Emma, you have an album coming out. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. This is my 5th comedy album coming out. It's called Myself. And I taped it just outside of Portland at a wonderful little club called the Infinity Room. And I'm really proud of it. It's really fun. It's very cool because, I took 16 months off of comedy at the beginning of COVID. And then when I started back up after the vaccine, we were only doing these backyard shows just in Boise, where if you said, I have a backyard and 40 people, I would come and do comedy just to practice and kind of like get back into the swing of things. And from Boise Backyards came this wonderful, lovely, sweet album that I just am so, so crazy about. So we're doing a big album release party April 28th at Visual Arts Collective at VAC down in Garden City, and CityCast Boise is sponsoring it, and it's going to be super fun. There's a couple other comedians on the show. It's going to be just like big and rowdy and fun. And all the CityCast Boise people, including you, are going to be there. So people, you can mensch around and tell people what the potato ice cream tasted like. And
I still have it in my freezer. I'll bring it. It'll be horrible.
Me too. And that really speaks to how terrible it is that 3 teenage boys did not have a single, like they all had one bite and they were like, nope. No matter how desperate for sugar they are, they haven't tried it. So, but yeah, it's going to be really, really fun. And people can get tickets on Eventbrite, or you can follow my socials. There's plenty of posts about them there. So people should come and hear some funny jokes. I'm doing brand new jokes that are not on the album that I've been kind of practicing, before, which Boise, I don't know, for better or worse, Boise always gets the first run of my comedy hour. So it'll be really great. And I'm really looking forward to it. I almost didn't do something, and I'm so glad Frankie was like, what? Of course you're doing something. Of course you should do something. So I'm really glad she talked me into it, because I was feeling kind of like, but it'll be a blast. I'm really, really excited for it.
It's always a great time when the team gets together, so this will be even better. I'm so excited.
I know. This is like everybody gets to be at a mono brunch with us. So
absolutely.
I'm excited. Blake, thank you so much. This was a really great conversation about a couple of very complicated local issues, and kind of fun to talk about Boise for the first time in a long time.
True. So glad to be moved on from the legislature. Yeah. Thank you, Emma.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. The show is produced by Frankie Barnhill, Evelyn Avitia, and me, Emma Arnold. Blake Hunter writes our Hey Boise newsletter, and our music is by Up Is The Down Is The. If you enjoyed our show today, leave us a review. It helps other people find us. We'll be back Monday with more stories from around the city. Bye.